So today we have a great discussion on the state of California, the state of insanity that is California. And joining me is our Hollywood correspondent, a talent agent in the thick of the entertainment industry, and good friend, Willy Fort. How you doing, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great, and it's always nice to hear how much better it is to be in Florida than California whenever I get your reports. I remember that one time we were talking and you had seen nicely delivered bricks. Nice. Remember that when that riots was going on, someone had put a little shipment, a pallet of full of little bricks for everybody to throw around. I said, my gosh,
You're
it's like
right
a whole
outside of a store. Yeah, I remember that.
I wonder who was the guy that delivered that little pallet of freshly printed bricks, freshly
I
baked bricks.
I don't know, but they were looking for trouble and they found it, and the city got locked down because of it. So it's wonderful, wonderful pandemic time.
So what's going on now that California doesn't have a pandemic as an excuse to do totalitarian stuff? What are they up to lately? Is everything going better? Is Gavin Newsome delivering on his promise?
No, the city, LA, and the state in general, it's kind of still a mess. It's weird. People don't want to go out. People don't want to do things. They want to go to music festivals, but now we have the inflation. So everything is just halted because of inflation. We have, in my industry, we have strikes coming up with writers and actors. So that'll put the industry in a chokehold for who knows, maybe the entire summer, which means no work for me. Not really. But other than that, no. The new mayor, she's cleaning up with the homeless population, but that's pretty much it. Gavin Newsom hasn't really done anything new. He's touring the country. I know that he's out about in Alabama, Florida, other places, talking about Texas and Florida daily on Twitter, but he hasn't really delivered for the people here. We have high gas prices, high taxes, high inflation, high everything.
How does
Are
a
you
young person, how does a young person who's single or young family survive in California in the LA area where you're at?
They don't. You move out far away. If you can get an hour away outside the city and drive in, that's great. Even my boss lives like an hour and a half outside the city in a more affordable town. But for single people coming here, if you don't have a financial benefactor, maybe your family, friends, or your trust fund, I don't know how you're surviving here. The way they tax people, I can tell you, I saw taxes for like a kid come in.
Mhm.
Let's say he got like $6,000 for a job. By the time he got his take home, it was like $2,300 just from taxes alone. Took out a huge chunk of that.
Wow. So it's not very hospitable for families to flourish if they're starting off in that area.
No, this place has always been expensive, but it's become ridiculously expensive, and somehow throughout the pandemic, it became even more expensive. So I don't know how people are doing it. I know people who make a great amount of money who are still struggling, and they're looking at other places. A lot of people left and went to Arizona, they went to Texas, they went to Florida just to get away, just because they want a better quality of life and they want more freedom.
So what does one do if one wants to be able to afford a home or something in the LA area and you're starting off in your 20s or 30s? Like
uh,
how do you survive? Like how if you're
I
not
don't,
wealthy?
no idea. I just read an article a couple of days ago. A couple that makes over $200,000 here. It says that they say that they don't ever think they can ever afford a home in Los
So
Angeles.
they're homeless and they make two hundred
Uh,
thousand dollars.
they probably live in an apartment because
Yeah.
apartments here are like $3,000 for a one bedroom luxury apartment in a prime part of town. 2,300 for a one bedroom in a nice part of town outside in the valley area, something like that. So looking for a deal is difficult. It's hard, and they just ended the moratorium on COVID, so they can now kick people out who haven't been paying their rent for the last 3 years. But even in LA and California, that takes about a year.
What happens in that year? They just can trash the place up and everything, or
Pretty much, yeah. You can do whatever you want. You can trash a place, you can destroy it, you can stay there, whatever you want to do.
wow. So what's the incentive to have rental properties? I guess because of the obscene prices that you can get for it.
No, a lot of people decide not to in California. They'll go other places because here's it's renters' rights. Renters have so much more freedom here to not pay rent, once you let them in, they're very strict on getting you in. But once you're in, you kind of can do whatever you want for a whole year, if you want, before they can kick you out. And then if you decide you never want to live in California again, you just go to a different state and it doesn't follow you.
I saw I saw that. It reminds me of that video of that woman who was on TikTok or something, and she said, "I let this person come in on Airbnb, and they still here, and they were coming, they were walking by to the kitchen. This is
Well,
my house," and she said, "No, it's mine now." And then she just goes into the bedroom.
squatters' rights are very strong in California. So even if I were to, let's say, go to an empty home, I were to go to an empty home and the home is empty and let's say it's for sale, and I were to just decide to take this over and make this my place, if no one finds me within a certain amount of months, it becomes my legal address and they can't kick me out for a while, a long, long time. It's happened before. It happens often in like Orange County. It happens during financial crisis when homes are often left vacant because people can't afford them, so they just leave them and people just move in and make it their home. It's a good way to get a mansion for like free. If you want a mansion for free, just come to California. Fine, squad.
And you get it for how long?
Until the sheriff kicks you out, which is going to be a while. Probably get 2 years.
Now, what about Orange County? Is that getting left wing too in its politics? There's been left wing. It was always kind of like an evangelical hub, right?
It is. It's teeters. I think it's going back to red a little bit. They swayed blue, especially like under Obama, then under Trump. But then the last election cycle, it went more blue. So now I think it's going to swing back a little red. It's still mixed. Like the people there are one thing, and the way they vote is another thing. And I think it's just a younger generation voting for things that they feel that the other party doesn't agree with, whether it's gay rights, trans rights, women's rights, things like that. So the younger generation is coming in and they're swinging things. But the older population there and the more, let's say, even the older millennial population is leaning more towards the red.
But what is the biggest cultural trend or interest point topic that people, you said the younger people are interested in the area of Southern California where you're at? What do you notice?
Women's rights, gay rights, trans rights.
So it's all about sex. Yeah.
Sex or gender or
Yeah.
identity and
Yeah.
being an individual. It's this things they care about, things that aren't under attack here in this state. Personally, I don't think they're under attack anywhere. They're just being regulated by the state, which they should because they have the right to do so. But those are the things that people care about here, and they're the things that people talk about the most when they go to the polls and they vote, or when they talk about elections coming up.
They're not concerned about the economy or rising prices, doesn't seem to be.
You think they would be, but they're not. A lot of these people, though, when you think about younger generations, a lot of them are still living with their parents, or their parents are helping them out with bills, so the economy doesn't affect them as much. And some of their parents have debt that's crazy, but they don't let the kids know. They just go from credit card to credit card, debt to debt, credit to credit, and that's just how they live their life until they die. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about regular middle class Americans, upper middle class. I'm talking about people who you would think would have a lot more money than they do, but in their bank account they don't. But their lifestyle says that they do. So it trickles down to their kids, and finances don't really matter to them. A lot of people have decided they're never going to own a home here, or they're going to one day break out and become a big star and become a millionaire, and everything will be okay.
So what is the pathway to being a big star in LA right now? It's probably not as much Hollywood now. It's probably wanting to be an actor on a streaming series, right? Or maybe
Yes.
a social media influencer on TikTok. Where's the big Hollywood now?
The big Hollywood now is probably in Toronto, but it's not here. It's not so much what it used to be, especially since the pandemic and all these companies are losing money with streaming sites, losing billions of dollars annually. Netflix has never really made money, but they're a tech company, so they don't have to make money. But with everyone trying to compete with streaming, and with this strike that's going to happen, and everyone wanting more money from streaming, we will see a slow trickle and death of streaming, and they'll probably just be maybe Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and Amazon Prime. Those will probably be the only 4 in 5 years.
Wow. And so this is something that old Hollywood's going away. You're not going to see their power as much anymore, you think?
I mean, we called Tom Cruise like the last big movie star after Top Gun came out last year, and that made over $1 billion. Like everyone's saying, he saved Hollywood. When Steven Spielberg said that, everyone agreed. But having a big blockbuster Hollywood star. I don't know. We have Chris Pratt, but people don't like his religion and his beliefs. So I don't know if he'll be able to sustain his career over the next 30 years or so. But you can't really name a huge star right now, other than people from yesteryear. By yesteryear, I mean the 90s and the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's a thing. Chris Pratt gets a lot of hate. He doesn't really say anything that controversial about
No,
religion,
and it's
you know.
very unfortunate. He's a very nice guy person. He's a very nice guy. He loves his family. He loves his wife. He happens to be married to Arnold Schwarzenegger and Maria Shriver's daughter, but he's not a big star in the sense of he has the ego. He has the attitude. He just happens to be in movies that have made over $1 billion, and he makes a lot of money for studios and companies and himself. But he's a nice guy. He's just a very average, nice guy who happens to be a big star now.
And
But
what's their problem with him?
his religion. People don't like his views, and it's not like he's come out and said anything
He hasn't really
controversial
said, yeah, he
himself.
hasn't said anything about anything that I
But
remember. I
people
think he went to a
associate
church that,
exactly
yeah.
that said some things, or maybe the organization put out a statement, but he himself has never said anything, and he himself has never shown anything to be other than he loves everybody. He's a nice guy, and he just wants everyone to do well.
Speaking of the woke whole thing, it looks like Super Mario is going to do more to threaten Disney's wokeness than the state of Florida when it comes to the
That's
performance so far in the box office. Kind of rattle because it's because a lot of the last Disney pictures haven't done well. They've been kind of
no,
doubling down on political correctness as their main focus in their content. And then when you have Nintendo, which is a Japanese company, is going to be more conservative. They're not going to push the envelope on political correctness, and they're performing so well, it may send a signal to Hollywood to tone down some of the woke stuff going on and family content. Do you see that happening here?
I don't know exactly. I think this Little Mermaid reboot will be a good test for Disney. See how that does. If it does horrible, then that'll be a sign that maybe they should tone it down. But other companies have already toned it down. Netflix has fired many people who they hired to be more inclusive. They fired that whole division. It's just not panning out as well as people thought, and it's a fickle industry. It's young people they want you to fight for this, so you fight for that, and then next thing you know, they want you to fight for something else, and you can't keep fighting their battles because it's an ever-changing thing. It's like every week there's something new to fight for, and you don't know if you're for it or against it. It's kind of like back in the days when we used to make a hero out of someone, and then we found out like, oh, they beat their wife, and it's like, oh, well, I guess this guy's not so great. That's what we're finding out. Like these things that we're fighting for, we don't really know the full extent. You can't just jump on the bandwagon, especially as a corporation who has investors to look after and profits to make. We're looking at Bud Light right now with their whole controversy, Nike. What's going to happen long term? We don't know. So we'll see what happens this summer. With this new Little Mermaid movie, if that does well. If it does, Disney will stick to it. If it doesn't, they might need to make some changes. Bob Iger's back. He's all about money, so we'll see what he does.
If Little Mermaid doesn't pan out, Snow White's going to be white, basically.
It's going to be very white. Everyone's going to be very white. I don't even know if it's, well, that is a part of it, but number one, they need more creativity, like a reboot of a movie that's so classic, like a Little Mermaid. I remember the Little Mermaid as a kid. I remember Snow White. I remember all the movies, Lion King, everything. Like we don't need remakes of that. Just come out with some new stuff, some new original things, and stick to it.
But they can't come out with hopeful, positive, innovative new things because it's something to do with the culture we're in. It reflects the values that we have and those eras. People like in the 90s, America still believed it had something awesome to look forward to in life. And a lot of the culture of America today doesn't think that. They're not, oh man, I can't wait to see what happens. We're going to go do these great things. Everybody's,
Well, you're
yeah,
correct about that. I remember during the financial crisis, they talked about how TV shows and movies were darker and that they were done purposely to match the mood of the country
yeah.
because we were on a dark time. So you're absolutely right about that. No one's hopeful. People are clinically depressed. People are diagnosing themselves with depression or bipolar disorder or things like that. No one wants to be happy. It's It's uncool to be happy. It's uncool to be unpopular, but people don't want to fit in, but they're all fitting in by not fitting in. So
Yeah.
yeah, it just seems like nobody wants a positive outlook on things. And to an extent, I get it. I mean, look at our inflation situation, the highest in 40 years. That's something that just bites me every day when I go to the gas station once a week or so to fill up my car. I get premium gas, and out here it's crazy. It's over $5. Take one for Florida on that. But things like that, I understand. But if you want to lift people out of those fears, you don't play into it. You give them something realistically hopeful to look forward to. And Hollywood's like, let's play into this. And now it's getting political, so they make the other side seem like the bad guy in some way. There's always like a wink or a nod to it, like those guys over there are the reason why things are bad. And I live in a state where the state is mostly blue, and the state is pretty bad.
So what would you do to reignite a more hopeful, positive cultural mindset, and also a more prosperous, pro family, pro middle class, pro future culture in something like where you're at in Southern California? What would you do?
I don't know. To do so, I might be canceled because I'll have you kind of have to go against what's popular right now, or just point out what's wrong about it, what's right about what you just did, and that might get you canceled or get you just yelled at by a bunch of people with blue hair and green hair, uh, with college degrees and things I've never heard of before. But it can be done. It's just going to be a long, slow turnaround process, and it's a cultural thing. I think, as you remember, when we were growing up, we had dreams and we had goals, and some of us are living them, and some of us aren't. But our values, our core values, remain the same. But a lot of things that we cared about, like a lot of the childish things we cared about, that went away, and it goes away with age. We're talking to people who have no children, who don't own a home, who don't see themselves probably owning a home. So I have some friends who thought one way when they were childless and young, and now that they have children and a family, they totally came around and they see how their parents were thinking, and it's like, oh, I understand why they thought that way. I understand why they behaved that way. Like I understand that now. So we may be looking at another 20 years before that happens. But in the meantime, a lot of things are going to get worse because there's going to be a new generation that's going to be even more ignited, more liberal, and more ready to fight against what people consider the old way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's something that I think we have to be mindful of, is that it's not just an economic thing that we can improve with tax cuts or regulations removed. Although that has a slim chance of happening in California. It's really a
No.
cultural thing that has to happen. That
Yes.
cultural renaissance has to happen, and that's something that, like you said, comes with age and comes with responsibility. And it seems like a lot of these crazy people who are shaping the taste making in California, it's their prescription drugs for psychiatric issues that's shaping the American cultural landscape, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah, a lot of people are on drugs. A lot of people are seeing someone. And again, I'm not against any form of positive therapy, anything like that. Go for it if you need it. Mental health is something, but just saying mental health and addressing it are two different things. Giving people drugs, or prescribing things that you think will work for you, whether it's marijuana, whether it's edibles, whether it's micro shrooming, that's not the way. It's going to take you out slowly. And
Mhm.
again, a lot of people don't have core beliefs. A lot of people here grow up. I'm not going to say religion's the way for everyone, but a lot of people don't have a core belief. They don't have a religion. They don't have a God. They don't have these moral centers that they have to live up to or anything like that. They just go with the flow. Laissez-faire, money is everything. And if that's not the way, then they're not living right.
Mhm. So, when you see Gavin Newsom, do you think that he has the qualities or the capability of winning the presidency if he runs in 24?
No, no. I know people outside of the state of California that love him, even in Florida, but a lot of people here do not. But being governor of California is kind of one of those things where it's not really a big thing here. He's not even the biggest celebrity here, because he's all the way in Sacramento. You have like the mayor of LA, who's bigger than him, mayors in other places who are bigger than him, and senators and congresspeople from the state who are bigger than him on a national scale. I know he wants to be president. Even his ex-wife, Kimberly Guilford, says he wants to be president, and he will run, probably the next cycle, probably 2028, but I don't think he'll get the nomination. He's just not the guy who's going to do it.
What? Why though? It seems like he's a pretty charismatic figure in terms of he's pretty aggressive at
I think
painting the
he
Republicans as crazies and fascists and stuff.
right now, as you know, when you're pandering towards one side, when you're trying to get the party's nomination, you go far, whatever. So is it far left, far right? I don't know if he can come back to the center. I don't know if he can be a centrist. He's so far left. I don't know if he can come back to the center. He's very green. We're going to be no longer selling internal combustion engine cars here in 2035, thanks to him. We're pushing a green initiative here that others would like to see Joe Biden push, but it's not popular across the country and it's not going to work across the country. We just don't have the infrastructure to do it. We're pushing for more green cars here in a state where every summer we have rolling blackouts and electric bills are higher than ever. Gas bills are high because they thought not to build new infrastructure for gas, natural gas. So gas bills were totaling $800, $300 for some families for 3 months. So it's things like that, just total lack of foresight that a lot of people in the state have because they're facing the bigger green initiative, just trying to pander towards the most liberal people to one day go to the national party, to go to presidency, to go to Senate, go to Congress. And he's just not the guy to do it. I don't know who is on that party after Biden. I know naturally it'll be the vice president, Kamala, but she's not popular within the party as well. She hasn't done anything. She hasn't stepped up. She's very comical. If you just like to laugh, see her laugh, that's
Yeah.
great. But beyond that, she hasn't done anything. Name something she's done. She's supposed to be handling the whole border crisis. Haven't heard anything about it. I do know she went to Africa while there were mass shootings. She's talking about Africa, so that's cool. But no, she's not the one either. So I don't know who from that party is going to lead. I do know AOC will probably run one day or be forced to run one day. That'll be hilarious. But no, I don't know who can do it on that side.
So, you think that the power of the Democratic Party is not as strong as some people may think? It seems like they're pretty monolithic, whereas the Republicans are getting arrested left and right, and it looks like a Jerry Springer episode with the way the Republicans are fighting half the time, and all that.
It's interesting. I think the Democrats have good PR. Good PR gets everything done these days. Good sound bites, good PR. They're popular. They're the party. They're the fun parent. They're the fun aunt. They're the fun uncle that comes over every summer or on the weekend that gives you candy, lets you eat cake and ice cream, and tells your parents it's okay. Or do you remember what you did when you were a kid and all this thing? But when you need help and when you need things done, you go to the other party, you go to that serious parent because they're going to be there to help you throughout life. They're going to be there to help you through tough situations. And I know that's not fun. People want to have fun. People want to escape their misery. But long term, you got to have someone there to, tap the brakes and say, hey, slow down. We got to get things done. And I don't see that happening with the other party. Right now, the Republican Party is it's not in disarray. It's just going through a change, which is good. We need a change. And it's interesting to see it happen in real time.
So, long term, it's going to be probably a little while before California is able to become a place that would be pro family and pro sanity. You would say, right? It's going to be
It's so weird. It used to be like 40 years ago. It used to be. You have to think California had two presidents, both Republicans, Nixon, Reagan, different respectively. And I was even looking at the data of the city, like city councilors and mayors in LA. These people used to be hard red. And then sometime in these late 70s, mid to late 70s and 80s, it just changed. And I'm not against mixing in things. I love a mix. You got to have some liberals, you got to have some super conservatives, some moderates, just to get things done because they can create new ideas. And I'm not saying every liberal idea is bad. It's just the way they implement it is horrible. They don't look at the financial repercussions of it down the line. They are too quick, too knee jerk to do things, and it harms us short term and long term.
Mhm. Well, it's always great talking to you, Willie, and I want to keep it up another time, but I think we'll call it a show here. I think we got a good overview of what it's like living in California, Other words, you would probably not recommend it for most families and folks
No,
wanting
I
to
would
have a
not
happy
recommend
life.
it for most families. No, and California is beautiful. Come visit, come vacation, and then go home and appreciate what you got back home because you will appreciate regular food prices, gas prices, and everything like that, and less traffic, a lot less traffic.
Thanks again. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.